Fawlty Towers, a sitcom that aired for just 2 short seasons between 1975 and 1979, has somehow managed to remain one of Britain's most beloved and talked about television series for nearly 5 decades. With only 12 episodes, it became a comedy landmark thanks to its razor-sharp writing, its unforgettable performances, and its unique blend of dry, dark, and physical humor. But there's also one episode that has, in recent years, become the center of intense debate. A single scene that critics say hasn't aged well, and that some broadcasters have chosen to censor altogether. So what happened, and why does this classic sitcom still spark controversy today? Join us as we dive into the episode that nearly took Fawlty Towers off the air for good. When Fawlty Towers premiered on the BBC in 1975, executives weren't convinced it would work. The show's dark humor and chaotic energy were unlike anything on TV at the time. John Cleese was already a household name through Montepithan. This new series aimed to bring that sharp, absurd comedy to a broader audience. Cleese created the show with his then-wife, Connie Booth. Together, they crafted a cast of characters led by Basil Fawlty, a short-tempered, socially awkward hotel owner whose attempts to run his seaside and usually descended into total disaster. The first series aired in 1975, and a second followed in 1979 for a total of 2 series and 12 episodes. What made the show special wasn't just its jokes. It was the chemistry between the cast, the precision of the writing, and its willingness to push social boundaries while making audiences laugh. The series almost didn't happen. The BBC initially rejected the idea, calling it too odd and doubting viewers would understand the humor. But after the pilot episode aired 2 strong reactions, a full season was ordered. Fawlty Towers became an unexpected hit. Viewers embraced its sharp wit and chaotic energy. But behind the scenes, Cleese and Booth were facing their own challenges. Their marriage was falling apart, and by the time the BBC asked for a second series, they were in the middle of a divorce. Despite their personal difficulties, they kept things professional, co-writing the second series and finishing it in 1979. Afterward, both agreed it was time to end the show on a high note. They didn't want to risk diluting its quality by, or forcing themselves to keep working together as ex-spouses. Among the show's 12 episodes, one stands out for more than just its comedy. The episode The Germans, part of the first series, outrage, in 1975. At the time, it was intended as sharp social satire. But in the modern era, it's become a flashpoint for debates about what should and shouldn't be shown on television. In this episode, Major Gowan, an elderly, out-of-Foat's former army officer, delivers a rambling story about a cricket match between England and the West Indies. In his monologue, he uses racial slurs, including the N-word, several times. The original intention of the scene was clear. It wasn't endorsing his views. Instead, it was mocking him, portraying him as a relic of the past, someone whose attitudes were outdated and offensive even then. But today, many viewers understandably find the use of the word unacceptable. No matter the context, that wasn't the only moment that made the Germans infamous. The episode also includes Basil Fawlty's chaotic attempt to host a group of German guests while telling himself over and over, "Don't mention the war." Inevitably, he does exactly that. He proceeds to mockingly reference World War II, throw his arm up in a Nazi salute, goosip around the dining room, and imitate Hitler's voice and mannerisms, all while his horrified German guests look on. At the time, this scene was seen as bold and provocative. It's a way of poking fun at British post-war attitudes and Basil's own ignorance. The line, "Don't mention the war," became one of the most famous catchphrases in British TV history. But decades later, these scenes have been reassessed through a modern lens. The controversies around the Germans weren't the reason Fawlty Towers ended after just 12 episodes. That was a creative choice. Cleese and Booth both felt they had said everything they needed to with the show. They preferred to end it while it was still sharp, rather than risk declining quality. Still, the legacy of that episode lingered. For many years, it continued to air uncut. But as social attitudes changed, broadcasters began to question whether those scenes should remain on television. In recent years, The Germans has become one of the most debated sitcom episodes in British history. Some broadcasters decided to remove the Major Gowan scene entirely for modern airings. Others left the scene intact but added a content warning explaining that the language reflects attitudes of the time. This move has sparked heated debate on supporters of removal argue that airing racial slurs, even satirically, can still cause harm and discomfort to modern audiences. Critics of censorship counter that cutting the scene erases historical context and undermines the satirical purpose of the episode, which was to ridicule prejudice, not promote it. John Cleese himself has spoken out repeatedly, making it clear he does not share the character's views and criticizing networks for what he calls a lack of understanding of satire. Despite these debates, the legacy of Fawlty Towers remains extraordinary. The BBC has repeatedly offered Cleese and Booth large sums over the decades to revive or continue the series, but both have always refused. Several American remakes were attempted. All of them failed miserably. Nothing could capture the precise balance of wit, chaos, and social commentary that made the original so special. The show continues to gain new fans around the world. Its style of dark, character-driven humor paved the way for modern classics like Seinfeld. In the 1990s, there was even a proposed TV movie where Basil would accidentally commit terrorism and end up being mocked in an Italian prison. But Cleese ultimately decided the humor wouldn't translate to a feature film format. Fawlty Towers lasted just 2 series, but its influence has lasted nearly half a century. The episode The Germans remains both beloved and controversial. It reflects a time when television comedy was willing to push boundaries, but also reveals how our cultural standards have evolved. Whether you see it as brilliant satire or a product of its time, one thing is certain: Fawlty Towers changed comedy forever. If you learned something new today, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell to stay updated as we continue exploring the fascinating stories behind the world's most iconic shows.